There's a certain kind of person who, right before the biggest change of their life, does something that makes no sense to everyone around them. They vanish. The calls stop. The messages go unanswered. The person who was always there, always listening, always quietly holding everyone together is suddenly gone. And most people read it the same way. They call it distance. They call it depression. They call it pushing people away. They're all wrong. Every single one of them. But psychology tells a different story, because for the INFJ, the rarest personality type on Earth disappearing isn't the end of something, it's the beginning. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why INFJs go silent right before they change, what's actually happening in their mind while they're gone, and why that disappearance isn't them abandoning you, it's them becoming someone new. You've met this person before, maybe you are this person. They're the friend who somehow knows what you're feeling before you say a word, the one people confide in but rarely get to confide back. They feel everything deeply, think about everything constantly, and carry a private inner world so vast that most people never see even a fraction of it. To the world, they seem calm on the surface. Underneath, an entire ocean is always moving. INFJs make up less than 1% of the population. They exist in every culture, every era, every family, the quiet counselor, the reluctant idealist, the person everyone leans on. And every so often, this person goes through something the psychologist Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by shedding who you were told to be. Jung believed real transformation doesn't happen in public, it happens in the dark, in solitude. It happens in a kind of psychological underground, where the old self dissolves before the new one can form. For the INFJ, that underground has a name their loved ones rarely understand. They call it disappearing. So we're going to walk through 7 reasons why it happens and why it's not what it looks like. Let's start with something that surprises almost everyone. When an INFJ goes quiet, it isn't rejection, it's construction. Biologists have a word for what happens inside a cocoon metamorphosis, and it's messier than people think. The caterpillar doesn't simply sprout wings, it dissolves. It liquefies almost entirely before it reassembles into something that can fly. The mythologist Joseph Campbell described this same pattern in human lives as the belly of the whale, the moment the hero must vanish into darkness before they can be reborn. So when the INFJ withdraws before a transformation, they're not building a wall to keep you out, they're building a cocoon to hold themselves together while everything inside them comes apart and rearranges. To the INFJ, that inner chaos isn't frightening. On some level, they know it's simply the price of becoming and they're willing to pay it in silence. But the cocoon is just the container. What's actually happening inside their mind is where it gets fascinating. The INFJ's mind is led by something psychologists call introverted intuition. In Jung's framework, this is the mental process that quietly connects patterns beneath the surface, pulling scattered clues into a single, sudden knowing. It's why INFJs seem to predict things, sense things, understand things before anyone explains them. But this function has a cost. It runs almost entirely underground, and it cannot work while the outside world is pulling at it. Noise, conversation, other people's needs, they all interrupt the signal. So when a major life change approaches, the INFJ's deepest mental machinery kicks into overdrive and it demands silence to run. Disappearing isn't a mood, it's a requirement. It's the only condition under which their mind can finish the work. Think of it like a photograph developing in a darkroom. Expose it to light too soon, and the image is ruined before it ever forms. Now here's where it gets a little more complicated, because this is the part even the INFJ doesn't fully understand about themselves. From the outside, the withdrawal looks like sadness, sometimes it even looks like depression. But there's a crucial difference psychologists draw here. The researcher Kazimierz Dabrowski describes something he called positive disintegration, the idea that some people have to fall apart on purpose in order to grow. What looks like breakdown is actually a breakthrough, dismantling the old structure. The tension, the withdrawal, the heaviness, these aren't symptoms of something wrong. They're the pressure of something becoming right. So the INFJ in transformation isn't drowning, they're recalibrating, quietly tearing down a version of themselves that no longer fits, so a truer one can take its place. It's uncomfortable, it's disorienting, but for them, staying the same would cost far more than falling apart ever could. And this next part, most people close to the INFJ get it completely wrong. Here's the painful irony. The moment an INFJ needs space the most is the exact moment their loved ones feel most abandoned. Attachment psychology explains why this hurts so much. When someone who was always emotionally available suddenly goes quiet, the brain reads it as a threat to the bond, the same alarm that fires during real rejection. So people react, they push, they question, they take it personally. But the INFJ isn't pulling away from you, they're pulling toward themselves. For a type that spends its whole life absorbing everyone else's emotions, solitude isn't a rejection of others. It's the only way to finally hear their own voice. The kindest thing you can do in that moment is the hardest: give them room without making them feel guilty for needing it. So if someone in your life has gone quiet right before a big change, remember, their silence isn't a verdict on you. It's a door closing, so they can finally listen to what's on the other side of it. If you're the kind of person who actually thinks about what's happening underneath the people you love, not just how they act, but why, and you've made it this far, that already tells me something about you. It would genuinely mean a lot if you hit subscribe. We put out videos like this every week, real psychology, explained in a way that actually makes sense. Now let's get into the part almost nobody talks about. Here's what makes the INFJ's transformation uniquely lonely. It happens invisibly. Most people are witnessed as they grow. They have friends who watch them change, who mark the milestones alongside them. But the INFJ's deepest changes happen in a room no one else is allowed into. The psychologist Elaine Aron, who studied highly sensitive people, found that this type process is experienced so deeply that they often need to retreat entirely just to metabolize it. And that means the hardest, most important growth of their life usually has no audience at all. The breakthroughs, the grief, the rebuilding, all of it happens in silence. So they carry it alone. And when they finally emerge, changed, most people never even knew there was a battle. That's the quiet ache of being an INFJ, to do your most heroic work in a theatre with no seats. But this is the root underneath all of it. To understand why INFJs hide their transformation, you have to go back to where they learned to hide themselves. Most INFJs were the deep child in a world that wasn't built for depth. They felt too much, asked too much, saw too much, and somewhere along the way they learned a quiet lesson that their raw, unfinished, forming thoughts weren't always welcome. Developmental psychologists studying attachment have long noted that children who feel their inner world is met with confusion or dismissal learn to protect it. They learn to only reveal things once they're complete, polished, safe. For the INFJ, this became a lifelong rule: never show the process, only show the result. That instinct kept them safe as children, but it followed them into adulthood, long after the danger was gone. So when transformation comes messy, uncertain, half-formed, they instinctively hide it. Not because they don't trust you, but because they learned long ago that a self still under construction is a self that needs protecting. Which brings us to the last one, and honestly the most important. Here's the truth that reframes everything. The INFJ doesn't disappear and then transform. The disappearing is the transformation. The transition researcher William Bridges called the in-between space, the neutral zone, the disorienting emptiness between an ending and a new beginning, where the real change actually happens. It feels like nothing is happening. It feels like being lost. But that emptiness is the workshop. It's where the old identity finishes dissolving and the new one quietly takes shape. And when the INFJ finally returns, they don't come back as who they were. They come back as who they were always becoming. That's the gift hidden inside the silence. The friend who vanished comes back clearer, kinder, more themselves than they've ever been. And here's the part that should change how you see it forever. That new self they bring back, it has more room in it for you than the old one ever did. The disappearance was never them leaving you. It was them going to get the person they were meant to bring back. So the next time someone you love goes quiet right before the biggest change of their life, you'll know what you're actually looking at. You're not looking at someone abandoning you. You're looking at someone doing the hardest, most sacred work a human being can do, becoming who they truly are, in the only place it's ever been safe for them to do it. Alone, in the quiet, in the dark that isn't empty, but full of everything they're about to become. They aren't broken, they aren't cold, they're in the cocoon. And if you can learn to trust the silence instead of fearing it, you'll be one of the few people who's still there when they emerge, ready to meet the person they fought so quietly to become. If this resonated with you, I made a video on why INFJs feel everything so intensely, the emotional gift that makes all of this possible. It's right here when you're ready.